Today I'm going to teach you how your hip mobility, the way that this joint moves, how this might be contributing to your lateral pelvic tilt or your sideways tilted pelvis with one hip hiked up. So lateral pelvic tilt means that the hips are tilted sideways, one hip is hiked up higher than the other. It can happen with the left side hiking up, the left hip, but most commonly the right hip is going to be hiked up. And we're also going to see that the shoulder on the side of the hiked hip is pulled down to kind of meet that right hip, and there's a big concavity on that right side of the body. That's kind of a telltale sign that lateral pelvic tilt is present. The shoulders will be uneven. There's other things that can cause that, obviously, but lateral pelvic tilt can definitely cause that because the base of the spine is the pelvis. If the pelvis is tilted to the side, the body kind of comes down towards that height side, and the shoulder on that side will be lower, okay? In that case, if the pelvis is causing the uneven shoulders, there's nothing really shoulder specific that you need to do to fix that. You need to put all of your focus and attention on the pelvis itself. Another sign you might have lateral pelvic tilt, sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not, but oftentimes there's gonna be a lot of one-sided, single-sided low back tightness and maybe even some SI joint issues, particularly more on one side versus the other. In my online coaching, I've helped tons of people completely fix their lateral pelvic tilt, get a level pelvis and subsequently level shoulders, get rid of that low back tightness on one side, improve their SI joints, so on and so forth. I also made a video recently about a couple exercises that can help with lateral pelvic tilt regardless of the cause of the lateral pelvic tilt. If you're watching this video, you'll probably be interested in that video. I got really good feedback on that. That's in the caption down below. There's also a link down below for my coaching program if this is all just a little too complex for you. But in that video that I made a couple weeks ago, I showed you a lot of exercises there that help with lateral pelvic tilt regardless of what the root cause is. And since that video was received so well, today I want to get a little bit more specific and talk about one of the most common root causes, which is missing hip internal rotation on the hiked up hip side. You see, normal hips should be able to rotate internally. This should be able to occur to about 40 degrees. One way to test this is you lay on your belly, keep your knee bent, take your leg off to the side. When your foot's moving off to the side, your femur and your knee are actually rotating in towards your groin, and that's a way to kind of test your hip internal rotation. When I'm assessing a one-on-one client online through Zoom, I'll have them get in that position, and I'll test their right leg and their left leg independent from one another. But something that I really like to do if I suspect lateral pelvic tilt, and I suspect the root cause of it might be missing hip internal rotation, is I have the client lay on their belly, pinch their knees together, and then split their legs open like a V. In an optimal world, what we're trying to see here is like a symmetrical V, both shin bones coming out to about 40 degrees. However, oftentimes that's not the case. When you do this kind of self-assessment this way, where you're pinching your knees together and you take a photo of yourself from behind or have somebody take a photo of you, then you can see the internal rotation of the right hip relative to the left hip, and you have like a direct side-by-side comparison. So the client that's on screen right now is somebody that has a right lateral pelvic tilt, and you can clearly see here that her right leg, that shin bone, is not moving as far off to the side as the left one is. This indicates that the right hip is missing a lot more internal rotation relative to the left hip. Since she has lateral pelvic tilt, this is a very important factor to discover because this is probably one of her root causes. How is this necessarily a root cause? Well, it's a common compensation during gait, during squatting type movements. If you're missing this, you're gonna end up doing this instead, all right? So the greater the loss of the internal rotation, the more likelihood you are to hike this hip up during dynamic movements, sports, walking, running, squatting, so on and so forth. So this video builds off of that other one that I've linked in the caption down below. If you're already doing those exercises, you're feeling good from them, you're noticing improvement, but you have more improvement to be made, try doing this test. Lay on your belly, pinch your knees together, split both your legs apart. If you find that the right side, and that's the side that's hiked up for you, is missing hip internal rotation relative to the left, then that is a factor that is pretty important for you to be addressing. If I notice this in my clients, here's exactly what I have them do. The first thing that I have them do is use a ball to release the piriformis region of the butt, okay? I have them spend about 30 seconds doing this. There's a lot of muscles in here that are external rotators of the hip. You don't need to know all the specific names of these muscles. There's quite a few in there, but really just the piriformis region is what I have my clients roll I have them use a ball in this position and spend about 30 seconds in that region, kind of doing some self-myofascial release. That kind of just clears the runway, if you will. It gets rid of any soft tissue restriction that's restricting hip internal rotation by addressing the muscles that might be kind of restricting that movement. From there, you want to move into some form of kind of stretching for the external rotators of the hip. The best way to do that is with a 90-90 stretch. You basically get set up like this. Your leg is out in front of you at 90 degrees, 90-degree bend in the knee. Your other leg is off to the side at 90 degrees where it intersects your body, and that knee is also bent at 90 degrees. The most progressed, most intense way to stretch these hip internal rotators is to rotate towards the leg that you're stretching, put one hand on the ankle, one hand on the knee, and lean into the stretch, and also rotate your body towards the stretch. I've showed this in the past though, and a lot of people don't have enough mobility to do that, okay? So there's a couple regressions. One thing you could do if that's way too intense is you're still in that 90-90 position, but you're just more upright with your body and you're keeping your chest pointing forwards more rather than bending towards and rotating into the hip that you're stretching. If even that is too intense for you, then you can kind of post up on the opposite arm and lean away from the hip that you're stretching slightly just to kind of take some of the intensity out of the stretch. This is a YouTube video, so I can't coach you on this. You kind of need to find which one feels best for you and pick that. So again, we're doing this 90-90 stretch after we've rolled the piriformis region for about 30 seconds. 30 seconds rolling the piriformis, and then about 2 minutes in this stretch. But there are two gigantic, super important things that you need to know about as it relates to doing this 90-90 stretch so you don't get it wrong. And these are super, super critical. One thing is, this is probably gonna feel intense, okay? If you're missing hip internal rotation, putting the hip in an internally rotated position is going to stretch a bunch of muscles that are tight. It's going to be an intense stretch for you. So it's very important that you're relaxed. You're relaxing your face. You're relaxing your hands. You're not clenching your hands, making an anger face or anything like that. You're breathing through the nose diaphragmatically, thinking about sending that air down into your belly. And everything is relaxed and calm, and you're doing a lot of nasal breathing. That sends a signal to your nervous system that your body is safe in this position, and it's okay to actually let go of the contracted tight muscles that are being stretched. Now, what's even more important than that is keeping your hips level. So this is where things get a little tricky. I already kind of described in this video how missing hip internal rotation, a compensation for that is hiking up the hip, okay? So when you're doing this 90-90 stretch, it's super critical that you keep the pelvis as level as you can. Because the more you're missing hip internal rotation, while you're stretching that side, the more you're gonna want to hike that hip up like this and create a big bend in your body. The more you allow that hip to hike up, the more you're kind of feeding into the imbalances that cause lateral pelvic tilt. Okay, we're trying to fix lateral pelvic tilt, get a more level pelvis. We're not trying to do things that reinforce that position, all right? So a little bit of hip hiking is gonna happen, all right? I'm not gonna lie to you. You're gonna notice that your pelvis wants to do this. You're gonna have like a curve on this side of your body here. A little bit of that is going to happen, but I want you to think about the butt bone, your ischial tuberosity, okay? The farther this comes up off the ground, I'm stretching this side into internal rotation. The farther this comes off the ground, right, the more of a lateral pelvic tilt you're in. Your goal when you're doing that 90-90 stretch should be to try to relax down and push that ischial tuberosity, which is this part, as close to the ground as possible, all right? As you hold the stretch more continuously for a couple minutes, it should be easier to kind of relax in this position, but this is super, super important to keep in mind. If you're doing this 90-90 stretch with a huge lateral pelvic tilt, you're not going to be getting the best results that you're going to want from doing this stretch, okay? So regardless of which progressed stretch you're doing, leaning into the stretch, rotating towards it, all right, pointing straight forwards or leaning away, your goal should be to try to keep that butt bone as close to the floor as possible and really consciously think about mitigating this happening. The more this is happening, the less of a good scenario we have, okay? We want to be pushing down, kind of thinking about doing this. Doing this to the pelvis, that is going to intensify the sensation of stretch here. So you can expect that. So be gentle on yourself, but just keep this in mind. We don't want to be excessively hiking up that right hip. If we're doing this, if you're missing hip internal rotation on the left side and that left hip's hiked, same thing. When you're doing the 90-90 stretch, the goal should be to keep the pelvis level. All right, so now we want to do some motion. We want to do things that actually bring that hip into internal rotation kind of actively, because motion is lotion. This is going to help get synovial fluid into the joint, help it move around and be a lot more buttery and smooth. And you're set up to do it now because we've kind of taken care of the soft tissue muscular restrictions. You can really pick any of these. You got a lot of options. You can hold a kettlebell up like this and roll up over on top of the hip that you want to mobilize. All right, making sure that that shin comes all the way down to the ground and touches it flat. Here, we're kind of using the ground as a constraint to internally rotate that hip. That's a very gentle hip mobility drill. You can do 20 reps of that. You can also do like kind of a banded joint distraction stretch into internal rotation, where you get a thick resistance band, anchor it onto something stable, put the other end up in your groin, and then you kind of use your hand to gently push the knee into adduction and internal rotation. This is another one that I will sometimes have my clients do. In my opinion, that's slightly more effective than the other one with the kettlebell. You'd also do that for 20 reps. I have other stuff that I'll put in the caption down below, other drills to improve hip mobility into internal rotation, which you could use those as well if you want to do pails and rails for hip internal rotation. You know, after some of these, you can definitely do that as well. The last thing we want to do here is integrate. Anytime we mobilize, we want to integrate. We want to utilize that range of motion after we've unlocked it, okay? Doing all this stuff, you know, rolling the piriformis region for 30 seconds, doing that 90-90 stretch for about 2 minutes, doing about 20 reps of any of these, you know, hip internal rotation mobilizations that I've showed you or linked to in the caption down below. Now your hip should have more range of motion for sure. Right, that internal rotation should be improved. Now we have to utilize that range of motion to teach your neuromuscular system how to own that range of motion, lock it in and make it more permanent. I've showed this drill many times in the past, but this is one of my most favorite ways to kind of wrap everything together and lock all the results in. You just basically pinch a foam roller between your knees, put a resistance band around the ankles, and try to get that ankle up as high as you possibly can when you're doing this, okay? You want it to go up as high as you can, utilizing as much range of motion as you can. When you're pinching that roller between your knees, it makes it very hard to compensate and do this wrong. The only thing that I commonly see my clients do wrong is they kind of do this half range of motion thing. Full range of motion here, 20 reps. So this protocol that I just reviewed with you here today, this will powerfully take care of the hip internal rotation, and it's a lot of steps to help improve that kind of permanently, okay? I do want to say that this is asymmetrical stuff that I'm talking about here, all right? We might only be doing this on the side that's missing hip internal rotation. If the other side is fine, then we might not be doing this as, you know, as much on that side because that side already has adequate range. Now I want to give you some words of caution here. Sometimes it's okay to do asymmetrical stuff to the body. Generally, what you do to one side, you want to do to the other side as well. But that's kind of assuming that your body is balanced, your left side is as strong and as mobile as your right side. Sometimes it's necessary to do asymmetrical stuff, like what I'm showing you here today. In this case, I'm kind of using the right hip as an example, doing these drills on the right side, not the left side, because the right side has an asymmetrical issue. It can't rotate commonly as well as the left side can. And in that kind of context, it's okay to do stuff to the right side that you're not doing to the left side, but only for a short period of time. We're doing this in an effort to fix something that's asymmetrical. Once the asymmetrical thing has been fixed, then we don't want to do it anymore, and we kind of want to return to an equilibrium and stimulate the left side equal to the right side. So I'm just telling you this because doing this should really improve your lateral pelvic tilt if, of course, you're missing hip internal rotation on that side. And if you do this for like a month or two, and you notice that your pelvis is a lot more level, all right, then I would encourage you to stop it or at least start stimulating the left side equal to the right side. You don't want to just keep doing this. Once the problem is fixed, you want to resume a normal kind of balanced training split that stimulates the left side independent of the right side. It is possible to overcorrect things. So really what you should be doing is always guided based on an assessment. Whether you're assessing yourself or you're a coaching client of mine, I'm assessing you. You don't want to just do this continuously unless you know that you continuously need it. To summarize though, if you haven't seen the other video that I made on lateral pelvic tilt, this is a little too complex, check out that video in the caption down below, or I might link it here on the screen somewhere. If all this is just way too complex for you and you want me to coach you, check out my coaching page. I'll put a link to that somewhere over here as well. I'll put a link down below too. That's it for today. Let me know what you want me to make videos on in the future in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time.